In a dramatic turn of events on Capitol Hill, former President Donald Trump has issued a stark warning to House Republicans as he pushes for the passage of his proposed budget bill. This visit marks a significant moment in the ongoing political landscape, showcasing Trump's enduring influence over the party even amidst a backdrop of internal dissent. Trump's arrival in Washington on May 20, 2025 comes at a time when Republican lawmakers are grappling with increasing pressure to align with his fiscal agenda. During a closed-door meeting, Trump emphasized the necessity for unity among House Republicans, cautioning those who might consider opposing his budget plan. "This is not the time for division. We need to stand together and deliver results," he reportedly told the assembled lawmakers. His message underscores his belief that any dissent could jeopardize not only the bill but also the party's broader political prospects. The budget bill, which Trump argues is essential for economic growth and stability, has faced skepticism from some House Republicans who are concerned about its implications for fiscal responsibility. Trump's warning highlights a growing rift within the party as moderates and conservatives alike weigh the political ramifications of supporting a bill that many view as aligning too closely with Trump's vision rather than traditional Republican values. As Trump navigates these complex dynamics, he is also contending with the fallout from a recent revelation concerning President Joe Biden's health. Biden's diagnosis of aggressive prostate cancer has sparked a wave of sympathy but also raised questions about transparency and the management of his health during his presidency. In the wake of this announcement, some Democrats are reflecting on their decision to support Biden's re-election campaign, with concerns about his physical and mental fitness resurfacing amidst the party's struggles in the 2024 elections. Former Representative Dean Phillips, who challenged Biden for the Democratic nomination, has suggested that the timing of Biden's cancer announcement may have been strategically planned to mitigate criticism of his leadership. "It's hard to see this as mere coincidence," Phillips remarked, indicating a belief that the disclosure could shift public discourse away from Biden's perceived inadequacies. This sentiment is echoed by others in the party, who are now grappling with a mix of sympathy for the former president and frustration over what some perceive as a lack of honesty regarding his health. Meanwhile, Trump, while expressing well wishes for Biden's recovery, has also hinted at a conspiratorial narrative questioning why the public was not informed of Biden's condition sooner. "This is something that should have been disclosed long ago," he stated, reflecting a pervasive skepticism among some Republicans regarding the Biden administration's transparency. As the political landscape evolves, both Trump and Biden find themselves at pivotal crossroads. For Trump, this visit to Capitol Hill is a critical moment to reaffirm his dominance within the Republican Party. For Biden, the challenges posed by his health issues could reshape the Democratic Party's approach to leadership and candidate selection moving forward. As both parties navigate these turbulent waters, the implications of these developments will likely reverberate throughout the political arena, influencing strategies and public perceptions in the lead-up to future elections. Looking ahead, the interplay between Trump's agenda and Biden's health will be closely monitored, as the stakes for both individuals and their respective parties could not be higher. With the 2024 election cycle looming, the decisions made in the coming weeks will undoubtedly have lasting impacts on the future of American politics. In a significant shift in international trade dynamics, recent reports indicate that Chinese exports of Apple's iPhone and other mobile devices to the United States have plummeted to their lowest levels in 14 years, reflecting the ongoing strain caused by tariff tensions between the two largest economies. This alarming downturn highlights the profound impact that U.S. tariffs enacted under the Trump administration have had on trade flows and market stability. The Port of Los Angeles, the busiest container port in the U.S., has reported a staggering 30% drop in shipments during the early days of May, underscoring the immediate effects of the tariff policies on logistics and employment. "Fewer containers mean less work on the waterfront," remarked Gene Soroka, executive director of the Port of Los Angeles. He noted that the downturn has reverberated through various sectors, affecting labor demand from truckers to warehouse workers. The implications of these tariffs extend beyond mere shipping statistics. prominent business leaders are raising alarms about the potential long-term effects on the economy. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, warned that the markets may be underestimating the risks posed by the tariffs, describing the current duties as pretty extreme. He cautioned that rising inflation and potential stagflation could reshape globalization as trade relations continue to evolve. Similarly, Jane Fraser, CEO of Citigroup, echoed concerns regarding the hesitancy of companies to invest amid such uncertainty. Retail giants are feeling the pressure, with Walmart indicating that price hikes are inevitable due to the tariffs. This statement prompted a sharp rebuke from President Trump, who urged the company to eat the tariffs rather than pass the costs on to consumers. In a series of contradictory messages, administration officials have offered varying opinions on who bears the financial burden of the tariffs, further complicating the situation. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent suggested that such warnings from retailers might represent a worst-case scenario, yet the reality for many businesses suggests otherwise. As the Trump administration intensifies its rhetoric, trade negotiations with key partners are becoming increasingly critical. Bessent indicated that tariff rates could revert if countries fail to negotiate in good faith during a recently announced 90-day pause. With Trump asserting that his administration is unable to handle simultaneous negotiations with multiple nations, the landscape of international trade remains precarious. The fallout of these tariff policies has generated widespread concern among global exporters. A recent study revealed that U.S. tariffs have dampened the mood of international businesses, with European companies preparing for lower inflation rates in response to shifting trade dynamics. As companies like Birkenstock and Pandora announce plans to raise prices in various markets to mitigate the impact of U.S. tariffs, the broader economic implications are becoming increasingly apparent. In China, the government is responding to the trade war with economic measures of its own, including interest rate cuts aimed at stimulating growth amidst declining exports. However, the Chinese manufacturing sector remains resilient, managing to avoid a complete collapse despite the tariff-induced challenges. As the trade tensions continue to evolve, the long-term consequences remain uncertain. Economists are warning that the tariffs could exacerbate inflation and slow economic growth while businesses grapple with the shifting landscape of global trade. The future of U.S.-China trade relations hinges on the outcomes of ongoing negotiations and the willingness of both nations to find common ground. In conclusion, as the ramifications of the Trump-era tariffs continue to unfold, the global business community watches with bated breath. The decisions made in the coming weeks will not only shape the immediate economic landscape but could also redefine the nature of international trade for years to come. In a significant display of political persuasion, President Donald Trump took to Capitol Hill on Tuesday, May 20, 2025, to rally House Republicans in support of a comprehensive legislative package that encapsulates key elements of his administration's agenda. The proposed bill, which seeks to extend tax cuts, increase military spending, bolster border security, and implement cuts to Medicaid, has faced resistance from various factions within the GOP, prompting Trump's urgent intervention. As he entered a closed-door meeting with House Republicans, Trump exuded confidence, declaring that the party was very unified and urging members to coalesce around the legislation before a self-imposed deadline of Memorial Day. "This is really just a pep talk," Trump stated, dismissing concerns about divisions within the party. He referred to the bill as one big beautiful bill, emphasizing its importance in advancing Republican priorities. However, the reality on the ground suggests a more complex landscape. The bill has exposed rifts among Republicans, particularly between hardline fiscal conservatives and those advocating for the preservation of Medicaid access. After a failed Budget Committee vote last Friday, GOP leaders spent the weekend negotiating with dissenters to bring them on board. This effort culminated in a late-night committee vote that saw original holdouts voting present a move indicative of ongoing negotiations rather than full support. Texas Republican Representative Chip Roy, a member of the Freedom Caucus, explained his decision to vote present as a gesture of respect for the party and the president, while still expressing the need for further concessions to secure broader backing. Trump's comments were particularly pointed regarding Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a vocal opponent of the bill, whom he suggested should be voted out of office for his stance. The stakes are high as Trump and GOP leaders navigate a minefield of competing interests. Among the factions are hardline fiscal conservatives demanding significant deficit reductions, lawmakers wary of cuts to Medicaid, and blue state Republicans advocating for an increase in the cap on state and local tax SALT deductions. Trump has expressed skepticism about lifting the SALT cap, arguing that it primarily benefits states like California and New York, which he has previously criticized. Despite the tensions, Trump's presence has been described as persuasive by those in attendance. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise remarked on the president's availability throughout the legislative process, reinforcing the notion that his involvement is crucial for rallying support. Trump's social media campaigns have also intensified pressure on holdouts, labeling dissenters as grandstanders and calling for party unity. The proposed legislation not only aims to fulfill Trump's previous commitments, such as extending tax cuts from his first term, but it also seeks to implement new tax policies that include exemptions on tips, overtime, and Social Security. However, the lack of clarity on how these initiatives will be funded and the potential long-term impacts on the federal budget remain contentious issues. As the deadline approaches, the implications of this legislative effort could have far-reaching effects on the GOP's cohesion and its electoral prospects in the upcoming midterms. The party faces the dual challenge of satisfying internal factions while also addressing voter concerns about healthcare and fiscal responsibility. Observers will be closely monitoring how these negotiations unfold and whether Trump can successfully navigate the complexities of his party to achieve a legislative victory. In conclusion, Trump's Capitol Hill visit underscores the delicate balance of power within the Republican Party as it grapples with significant policy decisions. As lawmakers prepare for the looming vote, the outcome will not only shape Trump's legacy but also set the tone for the political landscape leading into the 2026 elections. The coming days will reveal whether Trump's efforts to unify his party can overcome the divisions that threaten to derail his ambitious legislative agenda. In the swirling vortex of economic turbulence and political machinations, President Donald Trump's administration finds itself grappling with the repercussions of its own policies. As the trade war escalates with tariffs that disrupt global supply chains and inflate consumer prices, the consequences of Trump's economic actions are becoming increasingly apparent. Despite his frequent attempts to deflect blame, it is clear that the president cannot escape the economic mess he has largely orchestrated. Recent developments underscore the mounting challenges facing the U.S. economy. Trump's sweeping tariffs, initially positioned as a strategy to protect American industries, are now being recognized as a primary catalyst for rising prices. For instance, Walmart's CEO Doug McMillon has indicated that the company will be forced to raise prices due to these tariffs, a reality that Trump has vehemently denied, insisting that corporations should eat the tariffs. However, as any economist would attest, tariffs ultimately translate into higher costs for consumers, effectively functioning as a tax. The economic landscape is further complicated by the recent downgrade of the U.S. credit rating by Moody's, an act that Trump's team has attempted to dismiss by blaming the previous administration. A CBS News poll reveals that only 21% of Americans attribute the current economic state to President Biden, highlighting a disconnect between Trump's narrative and public perception. The reality is that many voters recognize that Trump is responsible for the economic turmoil as inflation and interest rates rise once more. While Trump's administration has attempted to spin the narrative by suggesting that the economy is on the rebound, the numbers tell a different story. The Bureau of Economic Analysis reported a 0.3% decline in GDP during the first quarter of 2025, countering the optimistic projections from Trump's economic advisors. Paul Krugman has noted that even with a reduction in tariffs from 145% to 30%, the damage inflicted on U.S. trade could be catastrophic, with expectations of a 50% drop in overall trade. The ramifications of such economic policies extend far beyond mere statistics. they threaten the livelihood of millions of Americans. Nearly 90% of small businesses depend on imported goods, while over 20% of the agricultural sector relies on exports. As the supply chain faces unprecedented disruptions, the trucking industry, which had just begun to stabilize post-COVID, is now bracing for another upheaval, as evidenced by a 30% drop in shipments at the Port of Los Angeles. The uncertainty introduced by Trump's erratic tariff policies has stymied business planning and investment. Major corporations are reluctant to provide earnings guidance amid the unpredictability that has become synonymous with this administration's approach to trade. This uncertainty is not just a temporary inconvenience, it threatens to plunge the economy into stagflation, a scenario reminiscent of the 1970s, where inflation coexists with stagnant growth. As global economic officials gather for the G7 finance ministers meeting, the specter of Trump's trade war looms large. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent faces the daunting task of justifying U.S. tariffs to international counterparts who are increasingly frustrated with the unpredictability of American trade policy. The summit, traditionally a forum for collaboration, may devolve into tense discussions about how Trump's policies have destabilized global markets. Despite the turmoil, there are signs of political resilience. A recent Harvard Capps/Harris poll indicates that for the first time since 2021, a narrow majority of American voters believe the economy is strong. This sentiment, however, is starkly divided along partisan lines, revealing the deep-seated divisions in American political life. While 76% of Republicans maintain optimism about the economy, only a fraction of Democrats share that view. As Trump continues to navigate this complex economic landscape, the future remains uncertain. His administration's repeated attempts to shift blame and exert control over corporate actions will likely continue to meet resistance from an increasingly aware public. The question remains whether Trump can recalibrate his approach to trade and economic policy before the fallout becomes irreversible. The unfolding situation serves as a reminder that in the world of economics, the consequences of one's actions, however grand or misguided, are difficult to escape. As the global economy braces for yet another potential shock, all eyes will be on Trump's next move and its implications for the American people and the world at large. In a striking demonstration of the political complexities surrounding international relations and military support, recent developments have revealed significant concerns over President Trump's acceptance of a luxury Boeing 747 from Qatar, intended to serve as a potential future Air Force One. As the aircraft awaits modifications at a San Antonio airport, the implications of this gift are reverberating through Washington, drawing attention from both ethics experts and congressional leaders. The aircraft, valued at approximately $400 million, has become embroiled in a firestorm of ethical, legal, and political discussions, particularly following Trump's recent trip to the Middle East. During his visit, he announced Qatar's intention to invest over $1 trillion in business deals with the United States, which included in notable order of Boeing jets. While Trump expressed gratitude for the gift and mentioned plans to house the plane at his presidential library once he leaves office, the retrofitting process required to make the plane suitable for presidential use raises numerous concerns. Experts warn that outfitting the aircraft to meet the stringent security and operational standards of Air Force One could take years. Richard Abulafia, managing director of Aerodynamic Advisory, highlighted that a rushed retrofit might compromise national security, leaving any passengers on board vulnerable. Nicholas Veronico, a former NASA contractor, echoed these sentiments, emphasizing the risks associated with hastily preparing a plane that lacks essential encrypted communications and safety features typically found in presidential aircraft. The political ramifications of this gift have not gone unnoticed. Some Republican senators, including Josh Hawley, have voiced their preference for a domestically produced aircraft, while Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer has proposed a ban on retrofitting foreign planes for presidential use. Trump, however, dismissed these criticisms, arguing that accepting the gift represents a significant cost saving for taxpayers and reflects a successful foreign policy initiative. While the discourse surrounding the aircraft unfolds, another pressing issue looms large: the future of U.S. support for Ukraine amid shifting political dynamics. As the Trump administration grapples with the complexities of international aid, European leaders are increasingly anxious about the potential reduction of American military support in the wake of Trump's presidency. The uncertainty surrounding U.S. commitments has compelled European nations to assess their own defense capabilities and strategies. Despite a recent minerals deal between Ukraine and the United States, the lack of concrete security guarantees from the Trump administration has left European leaders scrambling to fill the gap. The recent delay in approving a substantial Ukrainian aid package by the Republican-controlled House has further exacerbated these concerns. As European nations convene to bolster their support for Ukraine, they face significant challenges in matching the comprehensive military aid previously provided by the U.S. The political landscape in Europe is fraught with complications as well. Public support for continued assistance to Ukraine appears to be waning, particularly in southern European countries. Moreover, the collective action problems within the EU regarding the equitable distribution of military aid underscore the difficulties of maintaining a united front. The absence of a robust U.S. security guarantee complicates the prospect of European troop deployments, as many countries remain hesitant to risk their citizens' lives without American backing. As the situation evolves, the intersection of Trump's acceptance of the Qatari aircraft and the potential reduction of U.S. military support for Ukraine serves as a reminder of the intricate web of global politics. The implications of these developments extend beyond immediate reactions, signaling a broader reassessment of transatlantic alliances and national security strategies. Looking ahead, the challenges facing both the U.S. and Europe in their respective foreign policy directions will likely shape the future of international relations and military engagement. With Trump's presidency marked by a re-evaluation of traditional alliances and support structures, stakeholders on both sides must navigate an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape where the implications of seemingly isolated events can have far-reaching consequences. As discussions continue, the world watches closely to see how these dynamics unfold and what they may mean for the future of global security and cooperation. In a landscape marked by geopolitical tensions and shifting diplomatic strategies, the Trump administration's evolving stance on Iran and its implications for U.S.-Iran relations is drawing attention. Following a period of aggressive rhetoric aimed at dismantling the Obama-era Iran nuclear agreement, recent signals from the Trump administration indicate a newfound willingness to engage in negotiations. This potential pivot raises critical questions about the future of U.S. foreign policy in the region and the enduring threat posed by Iran's nuclear ambitions. The backdrop to this discussion is the upcoming Carnegie Connects event scheduled for May 28, 2025, featuring prominent experts including Suzanne Maloney, Vice President and Director of the Foreign Policy Program at the Brookings Institution, and Vala Nasser, a respected figure in Middle East studies at Johns Hopkins University. They will join Aaron David Miller as Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace to dissect the nuances of the current diplomatic climate and the potential for a new agreement with Iran. Despite Iran's cautious optimism regarding renewed negotiations, the country remains wary of the U.S.'s military intentions. Historically, the Trump administration's approach has oscillated between confrontation and engagement, leaving Iran to question the sincerity of U.S. overtures. As Maloney aptly puts it, the appetite for meaningful engagement with Iran must be assessed against the backdrop of past experiences and current geopolitical realities. This skepticism is mirrored in Tehran, where officials are hesitant to trust U.S. commitments given the volatility of Trump's foreign policy. Should these diplomatic efforts falter, the specter of military action looms large. Analysts are increasingly pondering whether American and Israeli military operations against Iranian nuclear facilities will become an inevitability should negotiations collapse. The implications of such an outcome would not only reshape the Middle Eastern geopolitical landscape but could also have far-reaching consequences for global security. Meanwhile, on another front, President Trump appears to be retreating from his previous diplomatic efforts to resolve the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. following a recent conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump has seemingly abandoned calls for an immediate ceasefire, leaving many Ukrainians disillusioned. Reports indicate that rather than demanding concessions from Russia, Trump implied that the resolution of differences must come from direct negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. The reaction in Ukraine has been one of despair and resignation. As Alina Boyko, a resident of Sumy, expressed, "This is a theatrical performance that has nothing to do with the reality of trenches or bomb shelters." The sentiment reflects a broader frustration among Ukrainians who feel abandoned by U.S. diplomacy that appears more focused on political theatrics than on tangible support. As military hostilities continue to escalate, with Russia intensifying its bombardment of Ukrainian cities, the prospects for peace seem increasingly distant. Ukrainian officials are now grappling with the reality that they must rely on their own resilience and the support of European allies rather than a strong American intervention. "With or without Trump, the war will end," remarked Alexander Palyi, a veteran, emphasizing Ukraine's determination to fight for its sovereignty despite the uncertainty of foreign support. In conclusion, as the Trump administration navigates these complex international waters, the dual realities of potential diplomatic negotiations with Iran and the ongoing strife in Ukraine illustrate the challenges of American statecraft. The future remains uncertain, but the consequences of these pivotal moments in U.S. foreign policy will undoubtedly shape not only regional dynamics but also the broader global order in the years to come. The world watches closely, anticipating whether diplomacy will prevail or if the drums of war will continue to echo in these troubled regions.